Hello dear students, and now next topic we are going to read, that is a laboratory thermometer. So before going to laboratory thermometer, let us recall what we have already read here in this chapter. This chapter is heat, and in this chapter we have tried to find out why do we feel hotness or coldness of any object. And we have seen that the same object may be hot for one person and that may be cold for other person. So the exact measurement of the hotness of an object is the temperature, and temperature, for measuring the temperature we are having one device, that is the thermometer. And we have discussed about clinical thermometer. Clinical thermometer is a device used to measure the human body temperature. And one more thing we have learned, that the average human body temperature is 37 degree Celsius. And we have seen that in clinical thermometer the reading is from 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degrees Celsius. Why? Because the human body temperature does not go below 35 degrees Celsius and it does not go above 42 degrees Celsius. And we have seen that there is a mercury inside the thermometer, which will expand whenever the thermometer is in contact with any hot objects, and with the level of the mercury we can measure the temperature of any hot object. And we have seen how we have to use the clinical thermometer. We need to wash it first, then we will give some jerks to the thermometer, and then mercury will fall to the lowest level. Then you will keep the thermometer under the tongue, and then after 1 minute you can read the thermometer after holding it properly in your hand. And one more thing we have discussed here, that clinical thermometer should not be used for finding the temperature of any other object other than your human body. So next is what we should use if we want to measure the temperature of any other object. So another type of thermometer that we can use if you want to measure the temperature of hot object, hot water, hot milk or any other object. So that thermometer is the laboratory thermometer. So you can see the diagram of the laboratory thermometer in your book. So this type of thermometer is the laboratory thermometer, and you can see here the maximum temperature on the laboratory thermometer is 110 degrees Celsius, and the lowest, let us see the lowest. So here it is 0, and 0, below 0 you are having 10, means the temperature on the laboratory thermometer is from minus 10 degrees centigrade to 110 degree centigrade. So this thermometer can measure the temperature of an object whose temperature may be minus 10 degrees centigrade and whose temperature is 110 degrees centigrade. So this thermometer can be used for measuring the temperature of any other object. Now let us read about this. You can see here the range of the laboratory thermometer is generally from minus 10 degrees centigrade to 110 degrees centigrade. And in case of clinical thermometer, the size of the clinical thermometer is very small, and divisions are also very small, but you can see here divisions as a size is also very large. There is much distance between the divisions of this thermometer. Now let us learn more about this thermometer. So how we can use this thermometer? Let us see this activity. Now take some tap water in a beaker or mug. We have to dip the thermometer in the water so that the bulb, this is the bulb of this thermometer, bulb is immersed in water but does not touch the bottom or the sides of the container. Hold the thermometer vertically. Observe the movement of mercury in the thermometer. Wait till the mercury thread becomes steady. Are there any variation in the readings? Discuss the possible reasons. Let us try to answer this question. Okay. So here in this case, you have to take some tap water in the beaker. You have to, one very important thing about the laboratory thermometer is what? You have to keep the laboratory thermometer in vertical direction. You see how it has to be kept inside the water. It has to be in vertical direction. And if you are not able to keep it in the vertical direction, the mercury level will keep moving, or it will not become stable if this direction is not properly vertical. So if you will keep moving the thermometer, the level of the mercury in the thermometer will keep moving, so it will not become steady. So in this way, when you are just dipping the thermometer inside the water, and one very important thing here is the bulb of this thermometer must not be touching the bottom of the glass or the sides of the glass. It must be inside the water, so that it should be able to measure the temperature of the water. You will see then the mercury level inside the thermometer will go up, and when it will become stable, you have to read this thermometer. So in this way you can take the reading of the temperature of the water, or tap water, or even the warm water you can put in the beaker, and you can find out the reading of the warm water also. So this activity 4.5 is what? Take some hot water in the beaker or mug, dip the thermometer in the water, wait till the mercury thread becomes steady, and note the temperature. Now take out the thermometer from water. Observe carefully what happens now. Do you notice that as soon as you are taking the thermometer out of water, the level of mercury begins to fall? This means that the temperature must be read while the thermometer is in water. So here one very important thing we have come to know, that if we are using the laboratory thermometer, you need to take the reading when the thermometer is dipped in the water. If you are taking the thermometer out of the water, immediately the mercury level will start falling down. But in case of clinical thermometer, this was not happening. You have to take out the thermometer from your mouth, and then you have to hold it in your hand, and then you have to take the reading of the clinical thermometer. So it means in clinical thermometer, the mercury level does not fall by its own, but in case of laboratory thermometer, the mercury level will fall by its own. So what is there in the clinical thermometer which is preventing the mercury to fall down by its own? So there must be something. So let us see what is there in case of clinical thermometer. So you can see here one kink, you can see here, this is the clinical thermometer, and there is one kink here. This kink will not allow the mercury to fall down by its own. Because of this kink, the mercury level will never fall down by its own. And after using it, you have to give the jerks to this clinical thermometer so that the mercury should fall to the lowest level. So by giving jerks, but in case of laboratory thermometer, we need not to give the jerks. The mercury level will fall by its own because there is no kink in the laboratory thermometer. So the mercury level falls by its own. But in case of clinical thermometer, because of this kink, the mercury level does not fall by its own, and you can take the reading properly by holding the thermometer in your hand. So this blue box, now you see, this is a new type of thermometer. Nowadays we use these type of digital thermometers. You see, mercury which is there in the thermometer is one toxic substance, and it is very difficult to dispose of also. So if by chance the thermometer breaks, then the mercury which will come out would be very dangerous, it would be harmful. So in order to avoid that, these days digital thermometers are used, and these thermometers do not use mercury. So till now we have seen clinical thermometer and mercury, laboratory thermometer. So what are the similarities and what are the differences between the two? Let us recall. What are the similarities? Both of the thermometers, whether it is clinical or laboratory, both of the thermometers are used to measure the temperature. And second thing, both of the thermometers they are made up of glass, and inside them there is mercury, and the mercury will expand whenever the bulb of both of the thermometers would touch the hotter object. So these are some of the similarities. And what are the differences between the two thermometers? In clinical thermometer, the range is from 35 degrees Celsius to 42 degrees Celsius. But in case of laboratory thermometer, the range is from minus 10 degrees Celsius to 110 degrees Celsius. Next difference, the clinical thermometer is used to measure the body temperature only, human body temperature only. But this laboratory thermometer can be used to find out the temperature of any object whose temperature is less than 110 degrees centigrade or greater than minus 10 degrees centigrade. Another difference of kink. In clinical thermometer, there is a kink which will prevent the mercury to fall down by its own. But in laboratory thermometer, there is no kink, so mercury level falls by its own. So, and one more difference you can add here. You can take the reading of the clinical thermometer by taking the thermometer out of the mouth and holding it in your hand. But when we are using the laboratory thermometer, we need to take the reading when the thermometer is in contact with the object whose temperature we are measuring. So if you are measuring the temperature of the object or water, the thermometer has to be dipped in the water while taking the reading. Means you should not take out the thermometer and then take the reading. Means if you are taking the thermometer out of the liquid, the mercury level will start falling and you will not be able to take the proper reading. So in case of laboratory thermometer, the thermometer has to be dipped inside the water if you are measuring the temperature of the water. Next topic is transfer of heat. Transfer of heat. Generally, if you have observed, suppose you have a hot cup of tea and it is kept in a room. You will see that the hot cup of tea will become cold after some time. And similarly, if you are having a one cold glass of water and again it is left open in the room, then you will see that after some time it will become warm. So hot tea will become cold and cold water will become hot after some time. Means the heat is going to get transferred from hotter object to colder object. In case of cup of tea, what is the hotter object? hotter object is tea inside the cup. And what is the colder object? That is the environment, that is the air around the tea. So from hot cup of tea, where the heat has gone, that has gone to the environment. And similarly, if we are talking about cold glass, water inside the glass, then heat has come from the environment to the glass or water. Means always heat will flow from hotter object to colder object. So let us read about this transfer of heat. You might have observed that a frying pan becomes hot when kept on a flame. It is because the heat passes from the flame to the utensil. When the pan is removed from the fire, it slowly cools down. Why does it cool down? The heat is transferred from the pan to the surroundings. So you can understand in both the cases, the heat flows from the hotter object to the colder object. So here the example of the pan is taken. That means when the pan is kept on the flame, it will become hot. Why? Because the flames are hotter than the pan. So heat will flow from the flames to the pan. And similarly, if the pan is removed from the flame and it is placed on any object or on the shelf of the kitchen, then pan will become cold after some time. So where the heat has gone? The heat has transferred from the pan to the surroundings. So it means the heat will always flow from the hotter object to colder object. So this we can read. Paheli asks, does it mean that heat will not flow, not be transferred if the temperature of two objects is same? Yes. If the temperature of the two objects is same, heat will not flow. You might have seen that the temperature of the hot tea, when it becomes equal to the room temperature, further flow of the heat will stop. Means the tea temperature will acquire some steady value, and beyond that it will not cool down. Means the tea will become cool, but it is not going to get chilled. It will acquire the temperature of the room. So when the temperature of the tea and the temperature of the room becomes equal, further flow of the heat will be stopped. Now let us see this activity 4.6. You can do this activity with your parents, because here you have to take one candle and you can take some iron objects. You can take the nails, nuts, or any iron object you can take. So here one metallic strip is taken. So this is a metallic strip. You can take any of the object from the kitchen. You can take one spoon. You can take a knife also. Like one handle of the knife should not be of plastic, otherwise it will get spoiled. Or you can take any this type of object from the kitchen you can take. So the serving spoon you can take, but if it is thin, your experiment would be faster. So you can take any of the objects. So here two bricks are taken and this strip is taken, and some of the small iron pieces are taken. These iron pieces may be the nails, these may be the nuts, or any small iron object you can take. And what you have to do, with the help of the candle wax, you need to fix all these small iron objects with this strip. And after that you can keep this metallic strip with the help of the two bricks like this, and from one end you will start heating this strip. And after some time, what you will observe, this first iron object will fall down, and after some time the second iron object will fall down, and then the third iron object will fall, and fourth and fifth. All these iron nails will fall down. Why is it so? Because the heat is getting transferred from one end of the strip to the other end of the strip. So that is why you are just heating only one end of the strip, but the heat is getting transferred from one point to the other point. That is why the heat will melt the wax, and the iron nails you have pasted will fall down. So this is one way by which the heat can be transferred from one point to the other point. So this is one of the activity, and this process by which the heat transfers from one end of the strip to the other end of the strip or metal is called conduction. So this method of transfer of heat is called conduction. So let us read this. The process by which the heat is transferred from the hotter end to the colder end of an object is known as conduction. So in solids, generally the heat is transferred by the process of conduction. So all the solids in which the heat can flow, they are called conductors of heat. So in all the solids in which the heat can flow, the heat will get transferred by the process of conduction. Do all the substances conduct heat easily? You must have observed that the metallic pan for cooking has a plastic or wooden handle. Can you lift a hot pan by holding it from the handle without getting hurt? Yes. Now the question arises, first we have discussed that in metals or in solids, the heat gets transferred by the process of conduction. Now the question arises, do all the substances conduct heat? Its answer is no. Only some of the substances can conduct heat. For example, if you have put one serving spoon in the vegetables which are being cooked, other end of the serving spoon will get heated up. Other end of the pan will get heated up. But suppose if you have put some wooden spoon inside the hot cup of tea, that would not get heated up. So it means the heat will not get transferred in wood, but heat can easily get transferred in metallic spoon or steel spoon or iron spoon. So the reason why the handles of the cooking pans are always made up of plastic or wood, because the heat will not get transferred to the plastic or to the wood. So that is why we can easily lift any hot pan without getting hurt if the handles are made up of plastic or wood. So here you can see this activity. You can take any of the articles, steel spoon, wooden spoon, or different materials you can take, and you can write here whether it is made up of metal or wood or plastic or anything else. And if one of the end of that is getting heated up, and you have to just check whether the other end of the material is also getting heated up. If yes, it means the other end is getting heated up because of the process of conduction, means heat is easily getting transferred in that material. But if the other end is not getting heated up, it means the conduction in that material is not taking place. So depending upon this discussion, we can divide the materials into two categories. One are conductors and other are insulators. So what are conductors? The materials which allow heat to pass through them easily are conductors of heat. So the materials through which heat can easily flow, those are called conductors. and examples are aluminium, iron, copper. So these are some of the materials through which heat can easily flow. And the materials which do not allow heat to pass through them easily are poor conductors of heat, such as plastic and wood. Poor conductors are known as insulators. The water and air are poor conductors of heat. Then how does heat transfer take place in these substances? Let us find out. Generally, we have seen that conduction is the process of transfer of heat that takes place in solids, air and in water. Conduction of heat does not take place, but even then we know that air also gets heated up, water also gets heated up. So what are the other processes by which the transfer of heat can take place in water and in air? So now let us see the other modes of transfer of heat. So here this is the activity. Take a round bottom flask. If the flask is not available, a beaker can be used. Fill it 2/3 with water. Place it on the tripod or make some arrangements to place the flask in such a way that you can heat it by placing a candle below it. Wait till the water in the flask is still. Place a crystal of potassium permanganate at the bottom of the flask gently using a straw. Now heat the water by placing the candle just below the crystal. Write your observations in your notebook and also draw the picture of what you observe. When water is heated up, the water near the flame gets hot. Hot water rises up. The cold water from the other sides move down towards the source of heat. This water also gets hot and rises up. The water from the sides move down. This process continues till the whole water gets heated. This mode of transfer of heat is known as convection. So we have seen other method of the transfer of heat, that is convection. First method we have discussed, that was conduction. Conduction is transfer of heat in solids. And now we have discussed how the heat get transferred in water. Generally, whenever your mother cooks food, or when the water is being boiled, or when your mother or you are making tea, how the whole of the water will get heated up? Generally, the water which is at the bottom will receive the heat from the flames. It will get heated up and then it will rise. And the cold water from the other sides will go down. Again it will get heated up and will rise. So the water which is going to get heated up at the bottom will keep rising in the upward direction, and the cold water will go downward to receive the heat from the flame. So this process will keep going until the whole of the water will get heated up, and this process of transfer of heat is called convection. How does the heat travel in air? In which direction does the smoke go? The air near the heat source gets hot and rises. The air from the sides comes in to take its place. In this way, the air gets heated. The following activity confirms this idea. So the same way, air also gets heated up. Generally, when because of the sunlight or sun heat, the surface of the earth will become heated up, and the air which is touching the surface of the earth will get heated up, and after getting heated up, that air will rise in the upward direction, and the colder air will go in the downward direction, or from other sides it will come there to occupy the space which will get empty. So one more activity you can see here. Light a candle, keep one hand above the flame and other on the side of the flame. Do your hands feel equally hot? If not, which hands feel hotter and why? So while doing this activity, be very careful. You can burn a candle. You can keep one hand at the one side of the flame and other hand just above the flame at some height, and you will see the hand which is just above the flame will feel hot. Why? Because the air after getting heated up will rise in the upward direction. So that is why that hot air you will feel, and the hand which is at one side of the flame will not feel hotter, because hot air will always go in the upward direction. So this is the activity you can do and you can feel. Notice that towards the top the air gets heated by convection, therefore the hand above the flame feels hot. On the other hand, above the flame, on the other side, however, there is no convection and the air does not feel as hot as at the top. The people living in the coastal areas experience an interesting phenomenon. During the day, the land gets heated faster than the water. The air over the land becomes hotter and rises up. The cooler air from the sea rushes in towards the land to take its place. The warm air from the land moves towards the sea to complete the cycle. The air from the sea is called the sea breeze. To receive the cooler sea breeze, the windows of the houses in coastal area are made to face the sea. At night, it is exactly the reverse. So we will discuss reverse later. So here you can see here, I have already discussed during the daytime, coastal area near the sea area, ocean area, you see the land at the daytime, the land will receive the sun heat and it will get heated up. So the air of the land will also get heated up and that air will rises upwards. And when the air the air rises upwards, the space will become empty. In order to fill that space, air from the sea side will come to fill that area. So the sea breeze will start flowing during the daytime. In order to receive the sea breeze, generally the people there keep their windows towards the seaside. And during the night time, the reverse will happen. During night time, the land will become colder and the sea will be hotter, because the water will take larger time or longer time to get cooled as well as to get hotter, heated up. So during the night time, during the whole day, you see the sea water has received the heat, but at the night time the land will release its heat immediately and will get colder, but the water is not able to release the heat that easier. So during the night time, the land will become cold and the water is hotter. So the air from the water side will get heated up easily and will move in the upward direction, or it will rise in the upward direction, and the cool breeze from the land will move from the land to the sea to occupy the empty spaces. So we can conclude, during the daytime in coastal areas, during the daytime the sea breeze flows, and during the night time the land breeze will flow from the land to the sea. So when we come out in the sun, we feel warm. How does the heat from the sun reach us? It cannot reach us by the conduction or convection, as there is no medium such as air in most part of the space between the earth and the sun. So this is the diagram. You can see daytime. At the daytime, the breeze is flowing from the land to from the sea to the land, and during night time the breeze is flowing from the land to the sea. Okay, now the third method of the transfer of the heat, that is radiation. So we were discussing that the heat from the sun, we have discussed conduction, that takes place in solids, convection, that takes place in liquids and air. But third method is radiation. How does the heat from the sun reaches us? There is no solid between the sun and us or land. There is no water or air between sun and land. No doubt air is there around the earth, but it is not extended up to sun. It is still few kilometers. So there is vacuum also between the sun and the earth. So third method by which the heat reaches us, that is the radiation. So the heat of the sun reaches the land by the third method of transfer of heat, that is radiation. The transfer of heat by radiation does not require any medium. It can take place whether the medium is present or not. When we sit in front of a room heater, we get heat by this process. A hot utensil kept away from the flame cools down as it transfers heat to the surroundings by radiations. Our body too gives heat to the surroundings and receive heat from it by radiations. So radiation is third method by which the heat get transferred from one point to the other point, if because of some medium, or even if the medium is not present. So all hot bodies radiate heats. When this heat falls on some object, a part of it is reflected, a part is absorbed, and part may be transmitted. The temperature of the object increases due to the absorbed part of the heat. Why? Why are you advised to use an umbrella when you go out in the sun? So, because we get the heat from the sun and we sometimes get very harmful UV radiations also. So, whenever we go in the sun, in order to avoid the heat, too much heat, we must use umbrella. Okay, next topic is kind of clothes we wear in summer and winters. You know that in summer we prefer light colored clothes, and in winters we usually wear dark colored clothes. Why is it so? Let us find out. Take two identical tin cans, paint the outer surface of one black and the other white, pour equal amount of water in each and leave them in the midday sun for about an hour. Measure the temperature of water in both the cans. Do you find any difference in the temperature? Yes, one of the cane is white, one of the cane is black, and we have kept water, equal amount of water we are going to keep in both of the canes, and both of the canes, they are left in the sun in the afternoon, and after 1 hour you can measure the temperature of both of the water in both of the canes. Can you suggest in which cane the temperature would be more? Obviously in black. So in black colored cane the temperature of the water would be more. Or you can simply touch both of the waters, even then you can find out, you can feel the difference in the temperature of the waters. One more activity is that fill the two cans used in activity 4.10 with the same amount of hot water at the same temperature, say at 60 degree. Leave the cans in the room or in a shade. Note the temperature of water after 10-15 minutes. Does the temperature of water in both the cans fall by the same amount? Do these activities suggest to you the reason why it is more comfortable to wear white or light colored clothes in the summer, and dark colored clothes in the winter. Okay, so when you are going to keep both of the canes in sun, we will observe that the water in the black cane will become heated up faster. And if both of the canes are having the warm water and you're going to keep them in the room or in shade, and again after 10, 15 or 20 minutes when you're going to touch the water in both of the canes, you will see that the white colored cane is going to lose heat more effectively. So that is why we always prefer to wear light colored clothes in summer and dark colored clothes in winter, because in summers we do not want too much heat. So that is why we always prefer to wear light colored clothes, because light colors, they absorb less heat or they will radiate more heat. Similarly, dark colored clothes, they will absorb more heat. So that is why in winters we prefer always dark colored clothes. So dark surfaces absorb more heat and therefore we feel comfortable with the dark colored clothes in winter. Light colored clothes reflect most of the heat and that falls on them, and therefore we feel more comfortable wearing them in the summer. Woolen clothes keep us warm in winter. In the winter we use woolen clothes. Wool is a poor conductor of heat. Moreover, there is air trapped in between the wool fibers. So this air prevents the flow of the heat from our body to the cold surroundings. So we feel warm. Suppose you are given a choice in winter of using either one thick blanket or two thin blankets joined together. What would you choose and why? Remember that there would be a layer of air between the two blankets. So what would you prefer when you are having a choice? Suppose you are given a choice, you can use one thick blanket or you can use two blankets half the thickness. So we will always prefer two blankets with half thickness. Why? Because when you will join two blankets, one layer of air will be trapped between the two blankets, and air is a poor conductor of heat. So our body heat will not go to the surroundings because of the more layers of the air, and we will feel warmer when we are using two thin blankets. So this is all about this chapter. You will write the key words in your notebook: Celsius scale, conduction, conductor, convection, insulator, land breeze, radiation, sea breeze, temperature and thermometer. So next time we will discuss the question answers and extra questions of this chapter. Thank you.